let's kick it off. I'd like to start by saying thank you for joining us today as we explore and hopefully debunk some of the myths out there we've been hearing about Microsoft Copilot. I just want to start this off by sharing my perspective on the opportunity we have in front of us as it relates to generative AI and where we're starting from today. For the folks on the call, I want to assure you that if you happen to be feeling overwhelmed, confused, excited, anything like that, you are not alone. There has been a tremendous amount of change and innovation in this space, and it's all moving very, very quickly. We're living through the early stages of a transformational technology that has the ability to fundamentally change the way we work. And it appears on the surface that the productivity enablement that's going to be made possible through Copilot for working smarter, better, and faster is right at our fingertips. And it's up to us to find a way to capitalize on that opportunity. So with that, I would like to say welcome to the guests here today. First, we are joined by John Treadway, CEO and founder of AITP. John, would you mind saying a few words about the work you're doing with AITP?
Yeah, thanks, Jeff, and good morning, everybody. Really appreciate the opportunity to be here. So AI Technology Partners is a fully dedicated generative AI services and solutions firm. We partner very closely with Blue Mantis and working with a number of their clients today. And we deliver Copilot enablement, Copilot solutions, custom Copilot capabilities, custom generative AI solutions, and so on. And we work very closely with technology and business leaders across the organization to really ensure that everything goes smoothly and successfully, and we're focused on getting those early results right in there. And good to be here, Jeff. Thank you.
Right. Yeah, thank you. Thanks for coming, John. Also, we are joined by Josh Morgenthau, the Microsoft Practice Manager at Blue Mantis. Josh, you mind saying a few words about the work you're doing here at Blue Mantis?
Yeah, of course. Thanks for the introduction. Good morning, folks. My name is Josh Morgenthau. To get to chat about AI and Copilot and large language models is pretty incredible to begin with, and to get to do so with all of you is even better. I come from a technical background, early days spent in, really primarily in data center virtualization. Today I'm the Microsoft Practice Manager here at Blue Mantis, really representing both our professional services across on-prem, M365, obviously reaching into Copilot and Azure, as well as our strategic partnership with Microsoft. Great to be here and great to chat with all of you.
All right. Well, thank you, Josh. Okay, so for the goodies, why everyone is here today. For folks on the call, the format here is that we are going to sort of toss out some of the myths that we've been hearing out in the market around, what Copilot is and not. And then we're just going to kind of debate a little bit. So, John, how about this? The first one's for you, and hopefully this will start to clear up some of the terms and language, which I know is difficult. So Copilot equals Copilot for M365. John, is this real?
Well, so this is a really interesting one. Microsoft has created this incredible brand push around Copilot, but there are lots of Copilots. So Copilot itself, there's no such thing as just Copilot, the product, right? There's Copilot that you can find in the corner of your Edge browser. There's Copilot on copilot.microsoft.com. There's Copilot for Microsoft 365, which is a big push for Microsoft for enterprise clients. There's custom Copilots, there's Copilot for sales, there's Copilot for GitHub, and so on. So think of that as Copilot is the identifier of generative AI capability anywhere throughout the Microsoft suite. And it really is everywhere within Microsoft's offerings. They're adding generative AI capability to all of it. So when somebody says Copilot, they're really talking about oftentimes trying to talk about or saying it about Microsoft 365, but there's so much more to it. And this is one of those interesting ones for, right, the attendees here, right, are technology leaders, IT leaders in the organization, and kind of arming you with some of the information to help you clear up confusion with the business side of your companies, right? The people that you're working with, your clients. When people are talking about these things, there's, I want to use Copilot, or I need a Copilot for Microsoft 365 license, get me one, and so on. And there's a lot more to the story than just what's in Microsoft 365, as amazing as it is. And we'll talk more about that, I think, coming down the line.
Yep. Excellent. Josh, are folks struggling with that? Like, is this confusing a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely, Jeff. And the joke I always tell is that Copilot's really 27 different products hiding under a trench coat. And so we'll talk about it as we go, but certainly understanding that there are different products, different Copilots with different use cases, some that are out of the box, some that are custom built for specific business use cases. I think that's the first myth to dispel is this isn't really one product, and it has implications in terms of which product should we use for our use case, what can we release to our users today, what kind of prep, and it varies right across all of those. And then you add the fun that's always Microsoft's renaming. I mean, if you've been around for, Defender being a product and then Advanced Threat Protection and Defender for Endpoint, now there's 27 different Defenders there as well. I mean, it's a familiar Microsoft process, which is why, again, selfishly, a great Microsoft partner who can help navigate those becomes so incredibly important.
Excellent. Yeah. Well, thank you. All right, next one. This Josh, this one's for you, and I think this one may, hit our listeners out there in the Zoomverse. No one is using generative AI at my company. Josh, is this happening today?
This is a myth like Santa Claus. I don't know, and if there's any believers out there, forgive me. I don't want to spoil anything for you. But
Josh.
Yeah.
We told you not to get into holidays, not to do holidays or politics.
I jumped into sensitive topics too quick, but no, absolutely. At our last Cloudscape event, I had a chance to speak alongside Jim Lee, who's a vice president of global partners for Microsoft. And one of the questions that he asked was, hey, how many of you are aware that your users are consuming AI in some format today, outside of, as a shadow IT thing, right? Outside of really IT's control and purview. And I don't think there was a single hand that didn't go up, right? And, obviously ChatGPT is out there, but there are others, right? We see AI being integrated into other products where the use is a question mark for many IT organizations. Things like Grammarly AI, Midjourney, Google's Bard, now Gemini. I mean, there's a million products out there that are accessible, and so you can't turn on the TV, you can't read an IT magazine or publication without being sort of bombarded by what is AI and what can it do. And the promises are overwhelming. The upside looks incredibly interesting. I think it's probably a little naive to assume that your users aren't experimenting in different ways, which just makes, things like having a great AI policy, having acceptable use that covers AI use cases all the more important. But also thinking about the other places that AI is being integrated. I've been a big Grammarly user for years, but now we're seeing AI integrated with that. And what does that mean for an organization's risk posture? What does that mean from an acceptable use in AI use? What kind of implications does that have? So absolutely, I think it'd be a little naive to assume that users aren't doing that. And we're seeing lots of data come back from teams that are looking at firewall logs, or looking at CASB solutions, and they're seeing this, right? AI is initially as a shadow IT concern.
Yeah, Josh, kind of adding on to that, one of the things that we've seen is some clients, and some of our clients together, right, who have locked it down, right, and they've put firewall constraints in there. Can't access ChatGPT, can't access this, locking it down on their phones using their mobile device management, and that's all good. But then they go home, right, and they're still able to use it, right. There's only so much that you can do to lock it down because it's so powerful. And this is one of those age-old scenarios kind of between IT and the users, where new capability comes along, the users want to get access to it. It shows up in the consumer space first, so I'm going to start doing it. And then, now what you're trying to do is lock things down and make sure that everything's protected, because you got to worry about, am I risking our data? Is it risking our brand? Is it risking, right? There's a whole bunch of areas where there are potential challenges. And if you're just letting the Wild West happen, that's no good. But locking it down doesn't mean that people aren't using it. So they're using it at home, they're using it in other forms. And this is why what Microsoft did back in, where they really rolled out this comprehensive strategy under the trench coat called Copilot, which I love that. I'm going to say umbrella. I think it's a little bit easier. But the umbrella called Copilot is that they're giving enterprise IT leaders a tool to help the business be able to leverage this stuff safely and securely, leverage this capability of generative AI, and really enabling the business to be successful, as opposed to just locking everything down. So I think that's really key here.
John, do you think there's an age-old challenge, as new technology comes out? AI is the latest, but this challenge where IT departments struggle to find the balance between, am I draconian and I say no, not until we understand, versus sort of being, I'm going to call it an impediment to progress. Not that it's without good cause. It certainly is, reasonable to pause and understand those concerns. But I'm just thinking in terms of IT departments figuring out how do we enable our users as opposed to just creating restrictions as well.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point, Josh. And IT leaders kind of have to deal with the fact that a lot of times in the business, there's not a lot of sensitivity to, I'll say, the reasons why IT governance is so critical and so important to the business, right? It's, I want to do this. Why are you saying I can't, right? Why do you keep telling me no? And but those of us that spend a lot of time in the IT domain, right, we understand how critical the function is and why governance is so important. So it's that balance, right? So start off with, yes, obviously what I want to make sure is that I'm doing things in a way that doesn't risk the business. But here's a fantastic opportunity. And we've seen this time and again. And I think IT organization and IT leaders have risen to this challenge on multiple occasions and waves, which is, all right, it's here, right? The genie's out of the bottle. It's not going back in the bottle. It's only going to get more important. How do I become the enabler so that I remove all of the risk, as much of the risk as I can, while providing a really smooth path for all of the users to be able to get access to all of this? So it's that, yes, I have to be careful, but what I really want to be is I want to be a partner to the business, and I want to be the one who says yes, and here's how, as opposed to no, and good luck, right? So, but we've seen this movie many times, right? And usually, it works out pretty well, because most IT leaders, even though they know their job is to protect the business and to do governance, want to support the business and want to support the users and want to support the business objectives and goals of the organization. And certainly with generative AI, the impact on the business is so strong that that being an enabler is more critical now than ever.
Yes, excellent discussion. All right, so next one. So Josh, this one's for you, and you do talk to a lot of customers who are trying to find their way here. M365 can do it all. M365 Copilot can do it all. It can do everything. Fact or fiction?
Fiction. As the Microsoft practice manager, I've drank enough of the Kool-Aid where it hurts me a little bit. But the truth is, no, Copilot for M365 is, I'm going to describe it as a generalist, right? It can do many things well, but the idea behind Copilot for M365 specifically, again, as we think about differentiators for that product versus the artist formerly known as Bing Chat Enterprise, now Copilot for Web. The idea was to take a data set that many Microsoft customers are already using today, Teams, SharePoint, OneDrive data, and be able to layer AI both from a generative AI content creation and also from an analytical perspective on top of what's already a ripe data set. And in those cases, it can do some really powerful things. Now, that doesn't mean that it fits all use cases. There are specifically, when we start talking about business processes, multi-step, where you're looking for AI to iterate on itself, right? Create a certain analysis, run that against a reference somewhere else. Copilot for M365 can start to fall down there a little bit, right? There are challenges with the way that it's structured, what it remembers in terms of your prompts and how you interact with it, what that means for the semantic index. So simple answer is no. And again, it points back to, I think a comment John made earlier, that identifying the right Copilot product, whether that's a pre-built product, a custom Copilot for a specific business use case, again, makes it incredibly impactful that we start with the right product, the right training, and the right understanding of what that adoption path would look like.
You brought up the artist formerly known as Bing Chat Enterprise, which I love that. So most of you, I don't know how many of you are really aware out there that you can actually turn on for free, if you're a Microsoft 365 subscriber, a secure chat bot interface for all of your users. It's there, right? So they go to, as long as you're logged in with your Microsoft 365 credentials through whatever identity system that you're doing, you can use that in Google, but it sings when you're doing it in Edge. You're logged in with your profile. You go to Edge, and there's a button on the upper right-hand corner, the Copilot button. You can open that up and start talking to it. And you can go to copilot.microsoft.com. And what you'll see is, if you're logged in, it says your data is protected on the upper right-hand corner, or wherever they put it now. They move it around a little bit, so to keep us on our toes. But your data is protected, which means that when you're using it, it's not sending data it's not storing that data and using it for training the model, right? We all heard the early stories about that and the risks of that, and we may come back to that a little bit. But it's protected, and Microsoft has clear terms of service and the indemnifications and everything else that they're doing. Now, that's a general chatbot, but it lacks a tremendous amount of power that you'd want to have. Like, if you're a ChatGPT user, this is really a starting point. It's not as strong. It has a much smaller prompt window. It doesn't have your history. It doesn't have all of that, right? Then you turn on Microsoft 365 Copilot, and really powerful, like can do a lot inside of Office. And in particularly in Teams, there's a Copilot app that you should install if you're using that. It does have history. It does have some things, but it still lacks a lot of the power of generative AI and what you can do with it. So just think about a process here. I want to respond to an RFP, right? I need to run multiple steps through a process. I need to evaluate the RFP that's coming in, see if I'm a good fit. I need to look at what my best answers will be, all the questions that I need to generate, and so on and so on. I won't waste time going through that whole process, but there's so much there that just using Microsoft 365 won't do it. And that's where custom copilots with logic that you can draw behind them is a better solution. So anytime you have a complex process, like I'm doing incident resolution for large scale outages and events, or I'm doing deep competitive analysis to help with a deal, or there's just so many of these use cases where the right answer isn't necessarily kind of an out-of-the-box tool. And I think of it like, if you're if you're around the house and you've got a multi-tool, a Leatherman or a Swiss Army knife, fantastic, right? You can do some things with it. But if you're a professional, you got a toolbox with each tool has a separate process. And so you need to think about copilots as professional tools. But occasionally, or a lot of times, the multi-tool will do just fine for the simple things that you're trying to get done. So kind of keeping that analogy in place.
Yep, right tool for the right job. That's
exactly
right. Exactly. All right. So let's pull on that thread a little bit. John, this one's next for you, and we hear this all the time, right? We hear customers say, "I can't do Copilot without buying a bunch of licenses." Myth?
Yeah, I mean, and you know, kind of, I think I hit on a little bit because we started talking about Bing Chat kind of on the last question, but or what was Bing Chat now is Copilot on the web and Copilot in your browser and in Edge. You have the ability to get access to do things very quickly just through that. Now, it's got limitations like we talked about. There's another way to get at this, right? So Microsoft 365 Copilot, again, really powerful. At $30 a user a month, you pay $360 a user upfront. It's not cheap, and for some companies, it may take a while before there's enough. And I want to say this the right way, that there's enough usage knowledge, like enough organizational readiness to make that worth it, right? It's worth it if all of your users are going to be aggressive about how they use it, but most people don't even know how to start. So it takes a little while. So there is an intermediate, like we can deploy a custom Copilot that is much more powerful than Bing Chat Enterprise, has history, has access to the latest models, allows you to do very large prompt sequences. You can do very sophisticated things, but it's just for all of your users, like a general purpose Copilot, kind of like a ChatGPT for the enterprise. A little bit less functionality than what you'd see there, but it's really, really very powerful, at least today. So you have the ability, you don't have to buy everybody Microsoft 365 Copilot licenses to get powerful generative AI in your organization that's secure, protected, runs inside of your Microsoft account and environment. And we can set that up right together. We can do that with you. And we can also help your users get more comfortable with generative AI so that, when it makes sense, and for those users that it really does make sense for today, that they can get the most out of that investment in the Microsoft 365 Copilot license, which is really key. You're going to invest in it. Let's make sure that everybody's going to get the value.
John, no, absolutely. And, you touched on a really interesting point that I think calls back to that conversation about, finding the balance between avoiding a resume generating event, but also not, giving users access to resources that they're looking for to drive the business forward. And so, again, that Copilot for web, the fact that it subscribes to Microsoft's commercial data protection, I think that's a great way to get started with very minimal risk. I know we'll explore some of that later, but for those of you who aren't familiar, right, back in 2016, I think it was, Satya Nadella published what was the first sort of letter around what would become Microsoft's responsible AI framework. So the governance mechanism that eventually becomes commercial data protection, and it's detailed, but it essentially says things like the data that you use, the prompts, the things that are generated aren't ever used to train the model, right? Where the data for commercial data protection that you enter, that it is prompting on and parsing, all of that lives within the same constraints and the same data storage mechanisms as your M365 tenant. Again, assuming you're signed in, you're using the CDP version, and there's ways to ensure that that's happening as well. But again, I think that's a great call out, right? Without buying any additional licenses beyond the licensing you have for M365 or O365 today, there is a safe way that your users can begin to experiment, to build experience around prompt engineering, again, in a safe, governed way that is doing the same things you're doing in O365 already.
Yeah, it's that right user, right tool, right level of capability that you need. Some of your employees might need a lot more. Some of them might need something in the middle, right? An enterprise-wide, really more powerful chatbot that we can stand up that's custom with your instructions, knows about your business, right? But is it still a fraction of the cost on a per user basis of what you'd pay for Microsoft 365? And yet, right, there's so much power in that Microsoft 365 Copilot that it's. And I'll say that Microsoft has done a really great job of promoting it, but they've created so much content, and it's so distributed, and it's so it gets updated every day, that I think there's also been a lot of confusion that's been created. And I'm not blaming Microsoft. Things are moving so fast, but there's a lot of confusion out there about what does it do? How do I use it? And all of that. And I think again, it goes back to there's not one answer. There's not one Copilot for everything. There's no one ring to rule them all, if you will. There's kind of Copilots for what you need. And sometimes I'll use the analogy. Actually, one of my colleagues was like, I've never heard that before, but many of you may have heard the term horses for courses, right? So which means if you're a racehorse owner, you don't run your short track horse, one who can sprint really, really fast, on a longer track. And you don't run the ones that run really well on dry tracks. You don't run it just after a rainstorm, right? On that same track. So you have horses that will run better in different environments. And Copilot's the same. It's a horses for courses right there. So yeah, hopefully that gives the answer there, Jeff.
Yeah, very well said. All right. So again, we're gonna kind of continue this a little bit. The next one, John, this is for you, and this is about an adoption strategy. So you can just turn it on, and it's gonna work, and you're gonna be wildly successful. It's gonna do all of the things you wanted. Is that right?
This is the shiny object syndrome, right? Cool new toy. I just give it to all my users, and look at all the stuff I'm reading in Wall Street Journal and McKinsey blog posts and everything else about all the great value that all these companies are getting from generative AI. And if I just enable, I turn it on, I pay the money, I get the $360 per seat, and I've got 1,000 users, and I put that money in, I'm going to get this massive return. The stories that you read about have the stories that you read about are really about people that have adopted this and have put in an adoption framework that is about change management around education and enablement and all of that. So, we've all been over the last, I'll say 12, 14 years in the enterprise, going through the cloud transition in IT, right? I'm going to move from just everything in data centers and on-prem into a cloud model. And what we learned is that it's not just the technology. It's not just, I'm going to go to Azure or AWS. It's that I'm going to have to change the way that I deliver IT, and I have to build a new workforce that knows how to do that, right? When I say build, I don't mean hire a new one. I mean, take people. Sometimes you hire some new people, but you take your team and you've got to upskill them, and you've got to get them kind of into a cloud native mindset so that they can move at scale. And that's where you get success. Generative AI is that, but it's for the entire business. Now, human resources professionals, marketing people, salespeople, solution architects, operations teams, finance teams, manufacturing, right? In some places it'll fit. I was on a call yesterday with an electronics manufacturer, and they've got tens of thousands of documents, and they're trying to provide tools that allow their users to get access to that documentation in a secure and clean and also way more easy to find things way, right? When I ask the right question, I can get a better answer than a typical enterprise search experience. So, and that's really, actually, it's amazing because generative AI is kind of the ultimate search tool, as long as you can get it to stop manufacturing results. So, but the key thing here is for the users that are using these general tools like a Copilot in Edge, Copilot Microsoft 365, and so on. You can't just give them the tool and hope that they'll be successful. And you can't just give them the tool and some links to some videos. And here's a list of prompt engineering techniques, right? You should do that, right? What we find is that we spend a lot of time one-on-one with teams within our clients, and sometimes one-on-one with the individuals, really decomposing their work, right? Thinking about, I'm trying to accomplish this. How do I do this properly with generative AI? And so after a couple of times of learning how to do that, it becomes they really start to get the muscle memory to do that again and again. But it takes time. So a key component of anybody's rollout strategy for any of this technology has to be a change management process, which is something that we spend a lot of time on with our clients. I don't know, Josh, have you seen something similar to that? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. John, one of the things that I point our customers to often is, we call it our strategic partnership with Microsoft, right? One of the things that I think Microsoft does very well is guiding their partners around the problems that they're seeing. And we were part of a Copilot Jumpstart program about a year ago. Whenever Copilot wasn't available for CSP, it was EA only, it was extremely limited. And even then, the messaging was not around, hey, Blue Mantis, we want you to go out and help your customers deploy this. It wasn't, let me show you how to do prompt engineering. It was around, let me show you how to build an adoption strategy for your customers. Even then, they saw that turning the licensing on might have been a short-term win in terms of, hey, we bought a license, great, but adoption would stall out without all of those prerequisites. Again, do we have the right policies in place from a governance standpoint? Do we have the things that we need up front in terms of user education, right? And I always point out, 5-10 years ago, Google skills became a thing, right? How effectively can you consume data? Can you write great Google queries to get the data back that you want? I think we're going to see AI prompt engineering moving in that direction as well, right? And so it's an investment, right? It's not just a product, much like security, right? It's a journey, it's an ongoing investment, and the way that you approach it, specific departments, specific use cases, what are the investments needed in terms of skilling, in terms of data structures, right? Making sure that we have the right inputs to create the output that we want. But moral of the story is, I think Microsoft called this one early on, right? It's not the execution that's the relatively easy part. It's the intentional way in which Copilot can be rolled out to ensure success.
Yeah, if you do want to get, I'll say a return on investment on that. If you really want people to be successful, you need to think about how do you create an AI native culture within the organization. And that's going to take some time. It doesn't have to be all that expensive, but it does take time. It does require some thought and deliberation.
AI native culture, I love it.
There you go. Well, we were cloud native, right? Cloud native people, and now we need AI natives, right? And you have them in your organization, right? You have people that are doing really sophisticated things, whether you know about it or not. They're doing sophisticated things with generative AI in their own personal life or in other things, and they're looking at prompt engineering techniques and looking at how to get the best out of this, and they're reading the articles and all of that. And you know what? The best way to start getting some success is to start identifying those people and energizing them, giving them the forum and the capability to help the rest of their peers move forward as well.
Yeah, great. Thinking about it and listening to you guys, right? I remember the phenomenon of shelfware. We would build a, features, functions, something like that, stick it up there, nobody'd look at it. Just listening to this and being a citizen of planet Earth, it would be a shame for folks to miss out and kind of just let this fall by the side of the road.
Yeah, you're gonna need to do something, right? And we're going to talk about this a little bit more. And the key to your success is how you approach it, as opposed to just what do you buy. But that's like anything else, right? We always talk about that people, process, and technology, and add data to that, and we can have that conversation. But you can't just buy the technology and expect it to be successful. Most of the IT leaders on this call already know that, but it requires an investment, and that means getting alignment across the executive teams in the business. And we're really good at getting that alignment when needed.
Yeah, very well said. All right. So moving on to the next one, let's change it up a little bit. John, as you did point out, and this one's going to go for Josh. A lot of folks on the call today are stewards. They're owners of risk in their organization. They're there to protect their business. And, something we heard early days, right? We can't do copilots until we get all our data in order. Josh, take me through this one.
Oh, this is a little bit divisive. I'm going to say false with a giant asterisk, the world's biggest asterisk on this one. So, this again comes back to, I know you guys are getting tired of hearing this, but right product, right outcomes. Whenever we talk about Copilot for M365, the common thing that we always hear is, I don't know what sensitive data is out there. I'm worried about the low-hanging fruit. I'm worried about salary information or sensitive projects. Proprietary data. I'm worried about Copilot surfacing that data in ways that I can't predict. And I think it's really important to call out here. This kind of goes hand in hand with this idea that Copilot creates risk, right? Copilot for M365 specifically, and again, this is where this asterisk comes in, it's taking advantage of the security structures, the governance, the permission mechanisms that you already have in place today. Pause, let me let that digest. The things that are necessary to protect from Copilot surfacing risk are the things that you should already be doing. Data sensitivity, data tagging, data loss prevention policies, really robust limits around sharing, preventing overly permissive data. If you've been on a call with me, you've heard me make this joke before. I'm an old man, so I tell the same jokes over and over. But it's like gluten-free steak, right? Steak has always been gluten-free, but now it's sexier and we get to call it Copilot prep. When the truth is, the data readiness piece is really the things that you should already be taking seriously, focusing on today. But that's only true, right, specifically of Copilot for M365. Again, there are other points of entry, Copilot for web, custom Copilots, where we can very granularly control the data that Copilot's working with. So if you have concerns, hey, my SharePoint Teams OneDrive structures, they're really not in good shape, I don't know what's out there, there are lots of other options that we could explore to get past that, hey, we can't do anything until the data's in order problem.
Yeah, that's critical, Josh. We do see that fairly regularly, right? And well, I can't start because I need to get a SharePoint data assessment. I need to understand the security and where everything is, and you know this if you turn on Microsoft 365 Copilot for somebody fairly junior in the organization as a test, right? Because usually what you do is you give it to the executive team and they usually have access to everything anyway. So that's not going to be helpful. But if you give it to somebody junior and you ask it to find specific client contract artifacts, service outages, escalation documents, et cetera, you may find that they have access to that because people are not all that good about their own personal use of SharePoint and OneDrive, and some of these things, and are in places where you don't expect to see it, right? But they're there. Now, that said, so that's an issue for Microsoft 365 Copilot because it has access through the Microsoft Graph to all of the data that you can see. And most people say, well, if I don't give Josh the link, Josh is never going to find it, so he can't see it. And Copilot's pretty good at finding things. So there's that little thing where you worry about that, right? And of course, Blue Mantis, right? You do data security assessments and can help clients through that process, right? And you could talk about that a little bit. But as you pointed out, the key thing is that I don't need to go through a massive data platform analysis and security analysis to be able to take advantage of this. The Copilot free stuff that we talked about, Bing Chat by any other name, doesn't have access to that data. And then when we build a custom Copilot, like we talked about, that enterprise-wide chatbot that you have, we control exactly what data is behind that and what could be accessed. So it could be public information about the products and offerings that you have, internal company policies and procedures that every employee should have access to, and so on. That'll be in there, but maybe not things that are kind of hidden away in different Teams folders and channels that you don't want everybody to get access to. So there's a way to move forward without any, without having to wait for any of this data projects to kind of get funded or get through. And I think we all know, right? And you guys on the call that are watching, this, the conversation about data platforms and getting my data house in order. I've been living this for 20 years, right? This conversation is never going away. You acquire somebody, a new capability comes in, you got to start all over again, and new tools are out there. And so, yeah, do you have to make sure that you've got control of that? Yes, you should take advantage of that. Take advantage of what Blue Mantis has to offer in the security space, particularly around your data. But you can get started today and get value out of generative AI without having that data project completed.
Love it. You can start today. Don't let it slow you down. But the soundbite I like to leave our visitors with is on this topic anyway, is obscurity security through obscurity dies with Copilot, right? We really have to be intentional with what we're doing there, which has always been the case, but especially true now with generative AI.
Well, obscurity, that's the whole Copilot naming strategy of Microsoft, is to be obscure.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. All right.
Excellent. Yeah, so a lot of talk about, not like super overwhelming, but definitely a thoughtful approach is what's required here, is kind of the message I'm hearing. So hopefully this next one kind of puts a little bit of a finer point on that. Copilots can't give me good content output. John, something you've heard.
Yeah. So, I mean, the myth is that Copilot creates garbage. Like, I'm going to give a lot of different, it hallucinates, it gives me biased information, it doesn't give me what I'm asking for, right? And that's true. And I think this is one for, kind of back to the conversation about readiness in your organization and change and getting the users kind of into a point where they can actually get value out of these things. It is not as simple as like a Google search where I just go in and I say, find me all of the boats, that are for sale in Fort Lauderdale, right? I need to think about how I ask the question. And what I like to say very, very quickly is think of it as a 5-year-old goldfish. It doesn't have any memory. It doesn't remember what you asked it yesterday. And it's a 5-year-old. It'll do what you ask it to do if you give it explicit instructions. And I won't go through the whole thing that I do on this, but just kind of keep that in your mind. Generative AI is a 5-year-old goldfish. So what do you have to do? Is you have to remind it every time you start, like, who are you? What are you doing? Why are we asking about this? And what do I explicitly want you to do? And maybe I give you some examples even of what it looks like if you've done it correctly. Like, and these are terms that you'll hear, like few-shot learning, one-shot learning, zero-shot learning, et cetera. And so you can get great output, but you can't get great output by, and I don't mean this in the wrong way, by being lazy, right? Meaning that you can't just say, write me an email response to this. You need to be very explicit about the tone that you want, what you don't want it to say, what you do want it to say, what kind of call to action you want to come out of that, as an example. And so we spend a lot of time with our users in the user community and our clients, teaching them, again, back to that point that I made before, teaching them how to get really impressive output. Like, I'm going to create thought leadership output out of this. I'm going to create killer email campaigns for my sales teams. I'm going to create really, really powerful internal communications to talk about strategic initiatives coming out of the executive team in a way that lifts everybody up. And again, you want to drive that, right? The other thing that we always say, and this is part of the policies and principles of generative AI that we put into our clients, is no matter what you're doing, you're still responsible for the output, right? So generative AI can create all sorts of amazing stuff, but at the end of the day, if you submit something, you're responsible for it, right? So you should read it and you should know it. And maybe you put your own voice in there a little bit, put some of your own content, do a little bit of editing. But in the meantime, you might have saved 2 or 3 hours of drafting, right? Or 20 minutes of thinking about what you're going to write and getting a lot further along. So you can get great output from Copilot, all of the types of Copilots, depending on what you're doing. And again, if it's a Copilot for a specific process like RFPs or major incidents or sales plans, et cetera, those are going to be, not only are they going to, you need to use them the right way, but they're already going to be predisposed to do the right thing, because in the background is all the right instructions, all the right data to solve that task.
Yeah, John, I was going to say, and if I'm one of our visitors today, I'm thinking, well, hey, what's the benefit if I have to write a 7-page long prompt to get what I want out of these specific outcomes? Am I really saving time? And I think, if you find yourself constantly having to create these unbelievably detailed prompts to get very specific output, that's a huge pivot towards a custom AI, a custom Copilot that would, again, inherit, sort of predefine all of those contexts. Do you want the output to be more creative, more precise? What's the tone? Write it in the style of, Arnold Schwarzenegger as the Terminator kind of thing, right? Whatever that output may be, silly example.
Yeah, there's actually, so one of the Q&A, kind of looking at this, we'll try to get to some of these at the end, but there's one really related to this topic that just came through from anonymous attendee. So Mr. Anonymous or Mrs. Anonymous, Copilot for Microsoft 365 was supposed to know my business, so I wouldn't need to retrain it at every prompt. Why am I paying $30 per seat per month if it's still a 5-year-old goldfish? I love that question. It's fantastic. So there's probably some misconceptions. Microsoft 365 Copilot has access to the data that you have access to. It knows some general things about you, right? But you can give it access to things by, make it use this file, use this Word document that I have access to, or use this PDF that I have access to in responding. But it's not going to know. I don't want to say this. It's not going to know the information that you really, really want it to know for that specific use case. And so this is where you kind of get down to you understand the strengths and the limitations of these platforms. The $30 a month is to be able to have it right there inside of Word, right there inside of Teams, right there inside of PowerPoint, right there inside of Excel, right? It's there, and it allows you to do things that have access to the data that you have access to, like your local files and so on. And it's really powerful with some of the things that it can do. But it isn't set up to, like, I know every competitive analysis brief that I've ever created. So I know my market, I know the analyst reports and what the analysts are saying about me and my competitors. And if I'm doing a competitive intelligence exercise, you want a specific competitive intelligence copilot that knows all of that information. And that's not going to come from the Microsoft 365 Copilot. That's going to be something custom, because we really need to load it up with all of the data that's very specific to that task. And more importantly, not give it data that is not specific to that task, so it stays very constrained into what it's going to respond. Right? It's just kind of a misconception. It's really powerful. It does a lot of what they say it does, but it doesn't know everything. And it shouldn't know everything.
Yeah. Well said. It's and again, for the audience, right? We're in the early innings here. Who knows what this conversation is going to be like 24, 36 months from now. We're in early days and we're all kind of watching the movie unfold together. All right, next one. So John, this one's coming back to you, and this is really sort of a strategy question. And for the folks, we've spent quite a bit of time together, John, you and me, and I find you intriguing and brilliant and visionary, particularly. I
didn't realize it was going to be one of these kinds of sessions. So thank you.
Like one of those, man, I love you things.
Yeah. What are we on Colbert now? Like, it's, I'm amazing, right? There we go.
It's super exciting. So here's the thing, right? Some people say, hey, my company doesn't need Copilot. I'm sitting this one out, and I'm going to be successful without it. What do we say about that?
Yeah, so it's kind of like saying, I don't need to worry about the internet, which a lot of people did for a long time. I don't need that to be part of my strategy. The internet came along, and I was early days doing internet stuff at companies like Sybase and others, and helping people through that knothole. And I tend to be kind of at the early adopter phase, not the bleeding edge, but the early adopter phase of a lot of these cycles. And I think it comes back to the same stuff. There are a lot of hype things that happen that are overblown. I think blockchain's one of those where it hasn't really kind of met up with the expectations. Generative AI is not blockchain. Generative AI is one where every time you turn around, there's a use case that you can apply this to, where you actually can see the value of it almost instantly. And so as an enterprise, as business leaders or technology leaders within these enterprises, the key thing here is to think about not whether or not, hey, my business runs okay today. It's whether or not I'm going to be competitive tomorrow, right? I'm okay today because we'll talk about this in the next one, but the market, I'll use that term, the future's already here, it's just not evenly distributed. The market there's early adopters that are way ahead, but there are a lot of companies that are still just getting started. The problem is that a year from now, right, if you're not in the game, if you're not moving forward, you're a year behind. And at the pace that this is moving, that year behind could be existential to the business, or at least to your competitive position and strength. Because think about it this way. And I don't want to get the wrong impression here, like, oh, if you use generative AI, I can get rid of 80% of my employees. But there are some processes that you're going to be able to do with fewer people. Maybe as you scale and grow, you'll need to hire fewer people, different ways to think about productivity. But if their cost basis for delivering the outcome goes down by 15, 20%, and they can pass that on to your customers, they'll have a competitive advantage there. If they can produce more content more quickly or better competitive analysis, they will produce better proposals and they will win more business from your clients. And if you're not doing that, then there's that old saying that in the industry we like to talk about this, is that AI isn't coming to take your business, but somebody using AI could very well come to take your business. I think it's really critical to be thinking about not just, is this really important, but it's urgent. And it really is. And I know that seems a little self-serving because, we're vendors, we're trying to, kind of get out there and help you guys and get involved. But I think there should be a level of urgency around this, because it is moving so fast. And there are people today that are, coming up, there's case studies, right? I've saved 50,000 hours of work in this, this company. That was one from Salesforce that was in Fast Company this week. Another thing is I saved 18% productivity in my call center by using generative AI against my knowledge base. And it allowed my new employees to be as productive as my veteran employees within 2 or 3 weeks, as opposed to 6 months. Right? And what is that if you have high turnover in a function like a call center? What's the value of that if you can make people as productive as your more senior people within a few weeks, right? And you've got all that turnover going on. So the case studies are there, and it's really critical. Don't wait until it's too late and you've lost the edge.
John, I love your insight on this as always. And, we keep talking about that. We've seen this movie before, right? This is probably way further down the road, but the first layer is, what is this functionally and operationally and strategically going to do for my company? But then there's this other angle too, right? You talked about, potentially the headcount reductions and what we could do in terms of efficiency. But then, the phase that comes after that is, what does this mean in terms of skill and talent retention? Right? What is it going to mean to my workforce that we don't have a robust AI process, that we're not operationalizing this and we're still doing things the old way? And again, that's probably maybe several years out for most organizations, but that's what we see time and time again, right? Why is this cloud thing important now? Again, you bring a person who doesn't have modern collaboration tools, modern communications platform. Like, why would I chisel this out into a stone?
I love that one. I love the talent side of this. And this was a big one in cloud as well, right? One of the big telcos, I don't think I can say the name, they became a recruiting magnet because of their work with public cloud and what they were doing. And actually Capital One, very public about it. They went to AWS and they started showing up at reInvent recruiting, and people were going to Capital One that were cloud natives and that they wanted to do more interesting cloud stuff. So they were able to attract talent that would normally go to like VC-backed startups, right? They were getting super, super high, incredible talent. I think that's the same thing that's going to happen here, is that people that are generative AI leaders that are doing the more sophisticated, more interesting things are going to be magnets for the people that believe in it and really want to drive forward in this new world. And those that don't, it's just going to be a less interesting place to work for some of those high talent people that you really want to have around. Yeah.
Fascinating. And we're closing up on time here. So let's just do one more, and if we can, try and keep it brief. Josh, I'm going to start with you on this one. Everybody's already using it. I'm too late. What do we tell them?
Yeah, not too late. I mean, there are things we can do today. Again, I'm going to lean on that Microsoft strategic partnership. We have options. We have adoption strategy workshops to help build out some of those pivot points what product, when, what's the investment, what's the use case, what does the plan for the next 6 to 12 months look like. We do have some tactical engagements to deal with, again, some of the data readiness pieces specific to Copilot for M365. We even have some funding options for organizations that may have started playing with Copilot and stalled out. So you've got a couple of licenses, you're still trying to figure out what the ROI is, if it's there, if it makes sense for your business. We've got some great funding programs to do some buy one, get one free licenses. But at the end of the day, right, there are options to get started. Everyone is in this learning and understanding phase and figuring out where it fits in their business. I think you're still in a great time to act, but as John said, right, a year from now, maybe another story.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it better. I think there's so much that you can do right now, and I think people should have urgency, but not panic. Right? I don't want to set the wrong tone here. Is that there's just the opportunities are still there. The key is to get started and not wait too much longer. But it's not like all of your competitors have already won. They haven't. In fact, in some of your clients, some of your companies, sorry, some of you guys out there, right, you get to be the one that disrupts your market by being the ones that move faster, and then you've got the advantage over them because, again, people are not all they haven't all jumped in yet, so it's not too late. This is actually exactly the right time, but it's moving fast. I'll leave it on that one, Jeff.
That's excellent.
Before you do the wrap up, there are
Yeah.
a couple of other questions in here.
Okay.
We don't have time to get to those questions. So what we'll do is, how about this, Jeff? I'm assuming we're gonna post this up here, and we'll put in the comments underneath. We'll put some answers to some of the other questions that came in. How's that?
Sounds good to me. And if we need to, we'll follow up with individuals who have identified. We can take care of that.
Yeah, Trent and Cliff and you guys. Yeah, thank you.
Cool. All right. Well, let me wrap up here. So, John, thank you very much for sharing your insights today. I found it super valuable. The conversation was great. Josh, you as well. Thank you very much for taking time out of your busy calendar to come here and share some, stories from the field about the things we're hearing out there. So for the folks on the call, I am going to fast forward here, and you should be seeing a screen on the webinar with a QR code. If there's anything you'd like to follow up with, if you'd like to have a conversation with John and his team or Josh and our team here, fill out the form on the code and someone will reach out to you. And also, I want to share that we will be awarding a Yeti cooler today to one of the attendees, someone who registered and made it through here to the end. So, John, Josh, thank you both very much, and we'll see you out there.
Thanks, Jeff, and thank you everybody for coming. It was great.
Thanks, everyone.
All right.
Cheers.
Thank you.